Attempt number 3. I can't believe. So we lightning struck twice with you and me. Like perfect A+ podcast conversations in my opinion, and both times the technology failed me.
Welcome to my life.
Yeah, that's what you're saying.
Yep.
Yeah. So I'm not gonna allow that to happen again because my conversations with you have been so good, and I've told people that are into listening to my podcast. I'm like, you gotta I reference you all the time as if they would have listened to the podcast and they haven't. It's like, yeah, like Alayna told me this and told me that, and so now finally it'll get out to the people, hopefully. If not, then I'm really gonna have to just bow to whatever your technology.
Right.
Yeah. The aura.
Technology fails around me daily.
Right. So I'll give a little background. I do this where I just start talking and I need to frame a little bit. So, Alayna, welcome to the podcast.
Thank you.
We've done 2 previously.
Yes.
And the recording has failed both times. Both were absolute A+.
Yes.
Top of the line. Loved them both. And they were fun for you and me. But this one we are going to share with the Dream Talking community. I've kind of took a good little break from recording podcasts, and I'm trying to get back on and do it regularly again. I got a bunch of people lined up. I just got to take the time to, meet up. So thank you for.
It's the hardest part.
It is, exactly. The hard part's out of the way.
Yeah.
Once we sit down, now this is the fun, enjoyable part.
Yes.
Just talk. Going back in my memory, it's kind of cool that it's been so long since we've talked because I'm going to ask you all the same shit I've asked before.
Right.
But we both have had enough time to forget about it that we could have it fresh and new. But I remember first having the idea that I should podcast with you when we were hanging out in your backyard and you were talking about teaching your kids. You teach 4 and 5-year-olds?
Yes.
Yes. I was saying something about teaching kids how to get in touch with their emotions, right? And I didn't really have any ideas or strategies, but obviously I have 5 kids. I used to teach kids before. That's the career path I was going towards before I took a detour and did what I'm doing now. And so I brought up kind of the idea of like, how do you teach children to get in touch with their emotions, right? Like seeing that maybe the difference between being angry and being like very pumped up and excited about something aren't
big emotions.
Right, big emotions.
Yes.
Exactly, aren't as far apart as maybe our culture or parents would kind of drill into you, and maybe being interested and curious in that.
Well, and they have negative and positive connotations, right?
Yes, exactly.
Being mad, we grew up as that's not okay.
Mm-hmm. There's something wrong with you.
Right?
You're mad.
Being super excited is okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Both big emotions.
Yes, exactly.
Super different connotations.
Absolutely. And so you started breaking down how you teach your kids about getting in touch with their emotions and getting a little bit of space when maybe they have some sort of an anger flare-up or whatever. And I was just like, okay, this is freaking awesome. We got to record a podcast. And then we recorded 2 great podcasts and I lost them both.
Yeah.
So there's the frame, there's the background, so the listeners are caught up. And let's dive right in.
All right.
Okay.
Where should we start?
Let's start with right on the track we were just diving into there. So what are some techniques or strategies that you employ on the day-to-day grind of, like you said, being in there with the kids?
Yes. Well, a huge, I guess, curriculum that I use is called Zones of Regulation.
Yes.
Right?
Which is awesome.
And like the earlier you can do this, the better, but like it even works with the 8th graders too. You know what I mean? You have to like switch things around a little bit, but like you'd be amazed like what they would do for a sticker or what they would do to just like not have to do like academic work, right? Where this is just
Small
as much
rewards.
academic, but like emotionally academic rather than
but in their
mentally
head, they
academic.
put in a different category. Yeah.
They're not doing social studies, so they're into it.
Yeah, they're not doing math.
You color code emotions, right? Red isn't necessarily, and you take all negative or positive judgment either way out of it, right? Red is a big emotion, You
Okay,
can be
yeah.
super excited that you're going to Disneyland and you are in the red. Or you can be in the red when you are so upset because you didn't get to have that brownie that you wanted for breakfast and your world, when you're 4,
Yeah.
is over.
Oh, yeah.
Like, that's it.
Mm-hmm.
You can't learn. And, like, a big part of that is realizing that, like, if our kids are not socially and emotionally sound, they're not going to learn. You could have the most profound
Yes.
wisdom to impart.
Yep.
And if they're so upset, like,
If they're still on the brownie, it doesn't matter.
Yeah, it doesn't matter.
You could be Gandhi, Mother Teresa. It's not.
Doesn't matter, right?
The brownie is first. That's
Exactly.
I'm sure you know, like Maslow's hierarchy.
Yeah.
Kind of. Yeah. It's like an emotional hierarchy.
Right. If your like physiological needs are not met, like, how can you be up at the top with self-realization?
Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
Like, there's no way.
Yeah.
So, first I think is like creating an environment where there's no judgment for emotion, right? Like, emotions are like the weather, and there are storms, and there are terrible storms.
Especially for kids.
And that's okay, right? That's totally okay to feel like that.
Yeah.
What do we do with that, though? You know, so creating a space of safety, right, where kids feel comfortable to experience what they're experiencing emotionally, and know that they're in a place that's free of judgment, right? So another thing is that I really like to do is, like, I call it emotional vocabulary, right? Because there's a difference between being mad and being irate.
Yes.
Right?
100%.
So
I love that.
And, like, so basically for my younger students, I'll use simple colors, right? Like red, blue, green. And red doesn't mean bad, it just means big, right? Blue doesn't mean, or, you know, yellow doesn't mean slow down, it means something else, right? So, and then as the kids get older, you can actually have almost like a rainbow where, like, kind of yellow feeds into red, right?
Yeah.
So, like, maybe you're super in the dark red because you're so upset about something, or maybe you're kind of mad, you don't really know why, you're just kind of irritated and on edge, right? So you're not all the way in the red, but you're more in, like, the magenta, you know? So I also like to give them, like, emotional vocabulary, because I think what our kids need the most is to be taught how to put into words what they're feeling so that other people can understand where you're at.
I agree so
right?
much. I agree very much. Yes.
If I know that one of my 8th graders' dogs died last night and he's so upset and distraught and he's at school and he's totally, like, trailing off, I'm probably not going to call him out because I know that, you know what I mean? If he comes in and says, Miss Altamari, I am so upset and this and that, and you know what I mean? I'm distraught and I'm depressed and I'm anxious about being here, you know what I mean? They don't have the word, they need to be taught the words to be able to express those things, right?
100%.
Because it's not just mad, bad, sad, and glad.
Okay, so much is coming in here as you're talking. I love it. One thing that I was thinking was, if you're creating that environment for them in school, that might be the only place they're getting that safe space to be able to explore those emotions, right? Yeah. Hopefully not. It is 2020. A lot of parents are, are educated and up, but whatever small percentage of kids there are out there are still getting that old school, like, there is no rainbow. It's binary. It's good or bad. You have a good emotion right now. You're being a good boy or girl, or you're being a bad boy or girl. You have a bad emotion right now, right? And so I love the idea of building that vocabulary so much. I was listening to Rudolf Steiner. Have you ever heard the name? They started Waldorf schools off of him.
Yes.
Okay. Yes. You familiar with that at all? Okay. Cool. So he talks about we only have so many words, but emotions are incredibly have so much ambiguity to them, and they're so complicated that there's almost you couldn't have enough words to really break it down. But just expanding the emotional vocabulary, and then they're able when the kids learn and they're able to get in touch with that, then they're able to communicate. That's what it's all about. So they can't just come in and to school and say, and
put their head down and not talk to me.
Exactly.
Right? Like,
yeah, that which is so easy to shut down when you can't communicate out, like, hey, my dog died. hey, I just...
Or, hey, nothing happened and I'm just super anxious.
Exactly.
I don't know why,
yes,
right?
Exactly.
Like,
I mean, as a freaking adult, like,
it's hard to do
I have
that,
so much anxiety, and I don't even know why. You know, you just, like, see your brain searching for a reason, you know? Like,
you try to make logic of something that's completely illogical. So, so it's...
So just being able to be like, you know, if a kid can come in and say, I have a whole lot of anxiety. That's it. You don't need to explain, you know, and that's another thing, a more kind of old school parenting style would be like, well, why anxious? You have no reason to be, you know, because they're thinking, I'm trying to hold down 2 jobs.
Well, it's very cause and
know?
effect.
Yes.
The old school way of thinking is very cause and effect. If you're anxious, what happened right before it that made you anxious?
Mm-hmm.
And emotions don't work that way.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
100%.
Yes, it would be great if they did. And it would be great if I could say, oh, well, that person cut me off and I almost got in a car wreck and that's what made me anxious, right? What happens if it wakes you up out of a dead sleep? Like, I'm sleeping, I'm safe. I know that, logically, I know that I'm safe.
Yeah.
So, you know, where do you go from there?
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
And I think, like, you know, what you were saying is, school may be the only place that they get that. And even if it's not, even if you do have these well-educated parents who are into emotions and into talking and into the non-judgment, sometimes it's easier for kids to relate to somebody who's a little bit more removed.
Oh, 100%.
Right?
Yo,
like,
yes,
a kid may be able to tell me that him and his girlfriend broke up, but they don't want to tell their mom and dad that, right?
Yep.
Or, you know, oh, I'm struggling with finding out who I am or my sexuality or who you know what I mean? Those really
in fact,
tough topics.
You might be the only person that they feel comfortable bringing certain stuff
to.
Yeah.
Exactly. So I think it's like I have such a cool position in all these kids' lives that it energizes me and it just like totally juices me up.
Man,
and
I get it so much.
You know, and like you're not going to get through to every kid, but hopefully, and you know, what you have to stop and remind yourself is that like when you're molding a mind, you don't see those effects immediately. You may not even see them. I have the blessing of working in a pre-K through 8 school, so I do see it a lot of the time.
Yeah.
But, you know, there may be times that I don't see the benefits of what I'm trying to mold.
Of course.
You know what I mean? But to know that that is in their mind and that it could somehow make a change in how they handle stimulus from the world, which there is so much of these days, is, I don't know, I think it's really cool.
I think there's almost no more important work. For real.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm that like.
I mean, of course I agree. I'm a teacher, so of course I'm like, of course my job is the most important.
Of course, and that's, you know, that was my world. I taught, and I have kids, and I just see the ripple effect of like what one small shift can do. And you know, and I really, when I look back at like who makes me the person I am now, it was all teachers. You know, whether it was a school teacher,
those are the first,
teacher,
right?
coach,
Yeah, those are and those are the relationships that I think people value, right? And I have the luxury of like having these kids that are so young and innocent that like it's pretty easy to just kind of get right in there, you know? Exactly. And so it's really cool because they haven't been so clouded with judgment and society, and their minds are just so pure and innocent, and it's just so cool to be around. You know what I mean? I really like everything just like is you know, it's amazing. I had the best day today because we made pancakes. And I'm like, if that makes you happy,
you're gonna make me cry.
Go for it.
That's something
you know,
that my
like,
daughter would say. Is she knows every Sunday we make pancakes in the morning, and it's like she looks forward to it the night before.
Yeah.
And if I for some reason am not there when she wakes up, she's like devastated.
Right.
She's like, we're making pancakes.
Right.
You don't understand. Like,
and like that's like your MIG moment. Like it is life or death. It is fight or flight. Like there is no right. And so like I think it's super cool to, and I think as you grow up, you lose that.
Yeah.
Right?
Absolutely.
To us, it's making pancakes, or to some people, it's like, oh my God, it's such a hassle. I'm exhausted on Sunday. I don't want to do it. Like, can we just not do it today?
Yeah.
But like to them,
it's everything.
It's, you know, so it's like such a good reminder to just like have the simplicity of life. Nothing is complicated for them, right?
Exactly.
Like they're mad, they hit you. You know, like
Yeah.
it's simple.
It's not complicated.
And then we grow up and we're like, I'm really mad and I want to hit you, but I can't. So let me tear you down with this. Or it just
and let's
gets,
hold on to it for weeks
or
and months and years.
let me just pretend like nothing's wrong because that's what society tells us to do. Because society says it's not okay to be upset.
And it's
like,
and it's a freaking just cancer eating you inside emotionally.
and then you have people like, you wonder why there's so much road rage. Like all these people are harboring so much junk, like even from your childhood, you know, because we grew up in an era where you don't really talk about things.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah,
it's
in our
not,
culture,
and
too.
the's so much judgment attached to it.
Exactly. Like,
It's
what the
not
hell's wrong
okay
with
to,
them?
it's not okay to have a meltdown in a store. It most certainly is okay to have a meltdown in a store.
Yeah.
You melt down wherever you need to, as
Yeah.
long as you're not hurting yourself or anybody else.
Exactly. Yeah, get it out now because it's gonna come out.
Yeah.
So how do you want it?
And we're so shamed for that.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like people are walking through the store and if their kid is crying or screaming, they're like, you know, whispering, oh my God, look at that kid, look at that mom. And there's so much judgment attached to parenting styles or, oh, well, she must be, you know, what is she doing to that kid that she can't control her own child? When it's like, I'm just letting my kid have a meltdown, just maybe you should have one too, and we'd all feel a little bit better, you know? So I just feel so blessed to have such a cool career where, like, no, I don't make a bunch of money, but, you know, I have a job that I enjoy doing.
Yeah.
You know? That's cool.
I know the feeling. I remember,
That's cool.
I first got into teaching. I taught martial arts when I was 16, and then I started teaching at a preschool. And then I taught like Montessori K through 6, and I remember this I had for the first time in my life I had this feeling of like, oh, I enjoy going to work, and this like 90% of people don't enjoy going to work. Like, I felt
like how crappy that we think that that's okay.
Yeah, I know,
right?
Yeah.
Like, and once you're in a career, and that's just where you stay, you know.
And you get
I'm
this
like,
mental box of like, you're stuck. I have to be here. I can't restart.
And it's astounding once you
the fear of
even think about opening that box. You're like, oh wow.
Yeah. Exactly.
You know?
Big time. Yeah, I've had
like we're literally animals trapped in cages, and then we wonder why there's so many like hateful people in the world. You know, like it's cool.
Yeah, and I remember at that age like going like feeling like I had this secret that like other people hadn't figured out. Like you can enjoy going to work and make a difference, you know, as cliche or whatever that sounds like. No, it ripples out into generations, you know, beyond you. And I've run into, like, in a coffee shop the other day, I ran into someone that was my student like 12 years ago. And she was like, I remember you used to say this. And I was like, no freaking way. Like little sayings I had or whatever, you know. And I'm like, I can't believe, you know.
Well, and isn't that so cool? Because that's all you have in this world.
Exactly.
We put so much stress on like physical things and stuff like and materials, and it's like after my dad passed away, like his stuff is gone, right? Yeah. Like that's all gone.
Yeah.
But what people remember and what keeps you alive as like a spirit and like a body in a sense is like the lives you've touched, the people that remember you.
That's it.
You know?
Yeah.
The lessons you taught people. So it's really cool.
Yeah, I know.
You know, it's super, super cool.
It is. So I'm very happy you have that. I hope most teachers, or a good amount of teachers, are able to see just how, you know, how, like you said, you feel so honored.
Right.
How valuable of a position you're in, and that you take it really seriously. And again, I know, like, especially with teaching kids, young kids, it's like herding cats. Like it's
it takes a special kind of person to work with the young ones.
Yeah, it's like all these things are ideals. A lot of times it's like crisis management, you know.
Oh yeah, especially working in like a private Catholic school, like where like there is this idea that like your kids should be walking in a straight line and quiet during morning assembly. And I'm like, you know, if we get from point A to point B and everybody gets there, I'm winning. Yeah, like, I'm good. So it's, I think, like, especially for teachers, I think that it's the yin and the yang, right? Like, I think that there needs to be a lot of, like, insightful teachers who love what they do. But I also think that, like, maybe the teachers that have a different style, I'm not going to say, like, a bad teacher, quote unquote, but, like, you know, maybe a different style I think that's all important, right? Like, you're not going to know a good teacher if you haven't had one that's a little bit more difficult.
Absolutely, yeah.
You know, so I think that it's just...
Yeah, you don't want a homogenous, like, just everyone hit you with the same thing, because that's not life.
Right.
Because there's not too many Alaynas out there after you graduate.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Right.
Like, you're going to deal with the whole spectrum of,
right.
like...
And I think it's also important to teach kids that.
Yes,
you know?
100%.
And I had one of my 8th graders who I had a couple years ago come back, and... the first thing she said to me, I said, "How is high school?" And she said, "Oh my God, you were right." And I was like, "About what?" I know I was right.
Yeah.
About what? Like, and she goes, "You know, you go from a class of 32 that you've been in the same class with the same kids since kinder, you know, give or take a few. And then you go," and she, I think, was in Brentwood. So she went from a class of 32 to a class of 700 just in her class.
Yeah.
It's over 2,000 kids in the school. And she's like, "I don't matter."
Yeah.
To them, I don't matter.
Exactly.
You know what I mean? I'm a number, and I'm a piece of paper, and I'm kind of just this, they put you in whatever class they can, you know?
Yeah.
And I was like,
they're just shuffling you through the system, you know?
Yeah. You know, and I was like, can you go tell my 8th graders now
Yeah,
that?
please.
Because maybe they'll hear it from you, you know?
Yeah, what a good point.
It was just, but it was cool to know, because I always tell them, because once they get into 8th grade, there's kind of this, their attitude changes. And they are just top dog, and they've been waiting 9 or 10 years to get here, right?
Because they are top dog,
and
they're little...
there's 32 of them. So, like, it's really easy to, like, have your little cliques and have your little,
big
you know.
fish in a small pond. Yeah.
And I always just say to them, like, just you wait. Good luck.
Yeah, life has a way
Good luck,
of
you know.
giving you a couple of those. It ain't over after high school either.
No. Well, and, like, but, like, it's also, I think, so important to, like, humble yourself and remind yourself that to them, it is their whole life.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
That takes a lot of imagination and
to them,
compassion on your side.
If they're dating somebody and they break up, like, their whole world.
That is a nuclear bomb being dropped.
Done.
Yes.
You know what I mean? Like, and so it's so interesting to just, and I think, like, people don't listen to kids enough.
Yeah.
You know?
Well,
it was hard because my first couple years of teaching, the number of minutes that teachers talk per day is so alarming. Right?
Yeah, I hear you.
No kid is going to learn. Think about, like, when your parents lectured you. You would take a few things here and there.
Earlier on
but,
the
like,
lecture, and then towards the end.
That's not how you learn.
No,
you know what I mean?
no.
Like, you learn from, like, collaborating with your friends and collaborating with maybe not your friends, right?
Yeah.
That's a super important thing to learn, too. Like, I know you don't like this person, but guess what? You're not going to like everybody you work with.
Yep.
So figure it out.
Yeah.
You know? And I'm, like,
being
so mean for doing, you know, but I'm like, okay.
Yeah.
You know? And I try to hold that space for them to be able to express that freely.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, exactly.
Like,
yeah. So
I didn't think that my mom was super great the whole time, you know, my whole childhood. She sucked most of the time. And, like, you're mean and you're not fair, right? And I think it's important to hold that space, but detach it from your space.
Yes.
Which has been a huge lesson that I've needed to learn.
Yeah. It's not easy to do. It's not easy to do as a parent because you're even more...
It feels so personal and it is so close to home and they just know how to get under your... Especially your own kids.
Oh, 100%.
Know how to get under your skin.
Yep.
You know? But if you hold that space for them and, like, don't let it, like, seep into your space, it just makes you so much more balanced. And it also teaches them, like... You can be mad and not be hurtful, right? Like, it's okay.
You can be constructively mad. You can give constructive
criticism.
Be
pissed.
Yeah,
Be so mad that you're going to go scream in your pillow and punch the wall. Go for it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Have at it.
Yeah. Yeah, but be, like...
You don't need to be hurtful to other people. Yeah. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's a cool job.
Yeah.
It's a heavy one, you know? It takes a lot for me to... I have to, like, I've been doing this whole, like, grounding cord bubble situation where, like, you imagine from, like, your whole spine down into the earth. I mean, it connects up too, obviously, if you know anything about chakras. And
okay, now we're getting
But, you know, there's this cord, and you can imagine it as anything, right? Like, mine is more of, like, a illuminated... like thread kind of, you know. Okay. It can be Tarzan's vine. It can be like anything you want, right? Yeah. And you just, like, know that everything you're feeling, good or bad, like you put it in the ground and you cut that off, right? Because the earth can heal everything.
You can take it.
So you just put it there because it's not yours anymore, right? And then you make a new grounding cord, right? You ground yourself up, you ground yourself down. Cool.
Yep.
You know, then you bubble yourself, which sometimes I need like a double or a triple bubble because it's been a really shitty day and like these kids are gonna make me cry.
Yep.
And you just know that like it's so hard to not, when you're empathetic and you care for your kids, it's so hard to not let their struggles be your struggles and their pain be your pain, right? And
That's
so
what being human is
Yeah.
we're soft wired for compassion.
Exactly.
That's why like we watch a video and you see somebody, you know, slip off a skateboard and bang their head, you react, right?
Yeah.
Because that's how we're wired.
Or when somebody dies in a movie, you cry your eyes out, right?
You see
like you're
them
so
in pain, you're
emotionally invested, right? That's who we are as human beings.
Yeah. And you see little innocent kids and it's like, how could you not just
who like come to school crying, who like aren't getting breakfast, who, you know what I mean? Like it breaks your heart. But I think it's important to like bubble yourself and know that like this is my space and like only good energy is allowed here. Anything negative I'm going to put into the earth, and like anything positive I'm going to keep, and the rest of everything that's banging and clanging all around in the world is just going to go off my bubble, right? Like it can't.
Yeah.
And it's like a conscious effort. Sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't, you know, but I feel like even if it works once, then it's worth it.
Yep.
Yeah, and I think it's really important to hold that space for your kids, but not, it's so easy as a teacher to get so overwhelmed.
Oh yeah.
Right? Like there are some weekends and I'm like, I am not getting out of bed.
Yeah.
I am just done
just
with the world. Like
yeah.
And I think it's important to like take that time for yourself, because I mean, if you are not healthy and sound mentally, emotionally, socially, physically, how can you give that to anybody else? How can you hold space for anybody else?
As you were,
right?
You're on it 100%. You were talking about it, I think, before we started recording, like charging your battery, right? You know? Like what charges your battery?
So I saw this like picture online, and it had a picture of a phone battery with, you know, a little red line across the bottom. It said 1%. And then right next to it, it had a picture of a person, and his feet were red, or her feet were red, and it said, you don't let your phone get to this low or get low like this, so why would you let yourself?
Yeah.
Right? Like,
exactly.
And that can mean whatever you want.
Yeah.
Whatever energizes you. And like, there's so much negative connotation with, I would say I'm like more of an introvert, right?
You took it right out of, I was just about to say that.
I get recharged by having my space.
Yep.
Right?
That's
like,
the best metaphor I've ever heard for the difference between introverts and extroverts. Is introverts, their batteries charge when they're alone. Extroverts, their batteries charge when they're around
and like
people.
No negative or positive connotation. Like that is just how you
it
recharge,
is,
right?
exactly.
Like, and
you can't argue with, you can't get mad at a phone for needing to be charged.
Well, and like the difference between like a Samsung charger and an iPhone charger, exactly. Right? Like they both charge and they both charge differently, you know? And I think it's just, we grew up and are still in a society that has such negative and positive connotation to everything you say and do and act and look like and feel like, and how you present yourself to the world means everything in our society, right? Yep. Where
appearances, persona,
I can wear sweats and look like a bum and go to the store. That doesn't mean I'm
and you could be like happy and a nice person and like, you know.
But like nobody's probably gonna talk to me on that day. But like if I have my makeup done and my hair done, like people think that I'm way more approachable, right?
Yeah.
Like so it's
just our monkey brains just taking shortcuts, like, you know, like
judging by appearances, right? And it's the hardest thing because that is what we're wired to do.
Yep, exactly.
You know?
Yeah, no, our brains are doing their jobs. They're just, I don't know why. For some reason, that person looks scary.
Right.
Well, you know, it actually has nothing to do with reality. It has to do with, you know, your
well,
evolution.
And, you know, where there's, again, this balance that needs to happen, right? Because I think especially as a woman, you have this higher intuition.
And you do need to
listen to it,
yes,
right?
Yes.
But it's the difference between seeing and feeling, right? Like, it's the difference between, like, I'm judging somebody based on what I see, and I'm judging somebody based on what I'm feeling. Because we are energy, right?
Yeah.
Like, everything is energy.
Yeah.
And if something is repelling you and pushing you off, like there's probably a reason for
Look
it.
into it. Be interested about that.
Or just like let it, realize it and like be aware of it.
Yeah.
You don't need to like go running down the street if you get a bad feeling, but like if that's what you feel like you need to do.
Yeah. Yeah, listen to it. There's a reason
do
for
it.
Yeah, especially I think like again, having compassion for like what it would be like to be in a woman's body. I heard this study that guys, I think maybe 2 to 3 times a year feel like their safety is threatened, right? And women, it's like 2 to 3 times a week.
Yeah.
Yeah, like the difference of just like when a guy, you see somebody walking across the street, someone pops out around the corner,
right?
Whatever
a
it is.
A group of people that could.
And that's not by accident. That's not a flaw in the system. That's because of evolution, right? There's a reason that they call it. I can't think of the exact word, but it's like the smoke alarm effect, where a smoke alarm is more geared towards going off by accident than not at all, right? So our brains are wired that way, that if you hear some rustling in the bush,
better safe than sorry, right?
Sorry, right? And there's a reason for that, because those that had that smoke alarm effect survived, and those that were like, it's probably nothing else, a tiger.
Boom. Yeah, exactly.
The one time that it was a tiger, right? They didn't survive. They didn't get to pass their genes along. And so,
thank goodness.
Yeah, yeah, right. And so the smoke alarm effect is tweaked much more sensitively for women. So I always try to like come from that place first. Like I get that it's privilege for me, walking around the world as a male. I don't feel threatened that often. I can walk around, in the Tenderloin in San Francisco, Telegraph Avenue in Berkeley, and I just don't feel threatened, and I'm like thankful for that. Okay, now what I was gonna get at was, you're triggering so much stuff for me. When you said, in a good way, when you said, you keep saying hold the space, that's literally been my mantra for like the last month. That's been my go-to, is hold the space for my kids, for my wife, for any friend. If someone comes to you, because I see this, I can get very excited, especially when people are talking about something I'm into. Oh yeah. And I see
things are firing. Like all your neurons are just stimulated.
Yeah, it's like a drug. It's like, it's very, endorphins are flowing and stuff. And then I can realize like, oh, it is selfish. It's like I'm, like hold the space for them. Because they might not have anybody holding the space for them. You know what I mean?
And they might not even be aware of that.
Oh, yeah, exactly.
You know what I mean?
Most likely they're not. Most likely they're just like, I don't know why I feel so alone. So, like, nobody hears me, Yeah. And so one of my favorite dudes died a couple days before Christmas, Ram Dass. He was 88. It wasn't a surprise or anything, but I was surprised that when I found out about it, I like cried a whole bunch.
But see, even there, still loss.
Yeah, it's loss. Exactly.
Doesn't matter,
yeah,
right?
See, I'm
like
already
you put,
doing
you put
I'm trying
this,
to be
like,
a guy about
right?
it.
Like,
I know.
Well, and like not even that, but like just society, male or female or however you identify, puts that connotation on it, right?
Exactly.
Oh, your loss isn't as bad as my loss because he was 88 and my dad was 65.
Yeah.
Right? Like, no, it's still loss.
When you're
it
keeping
all feels
score
the
like
same.
that, it's not helpful.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. So getting into that, so I cried, and then as I'm crying, I'm like, why am I crying? This is ridiculous. He was old. I didn't know him. I had never met him in person. But when I talked to my good friend about it, she said
you never physically met him. I don't think it's fair to say like you didn't know him.
I knew
you know
him.
what I
yeah,
mean? Like,
exactly. 100%. I've even, this is woo-woo-y, but whatever, since he's passed, I've had conversations with him, and that was from the advice.
We all know I believe in that. So.
Yeah. And so what my friend said, the perfect thing, I said, I don't know why, but I've been crying a lot. I'm like surprising myself how much I'm crying over the fact that he passed away. And she said, sometimes when we lose someone that helped us feel less alone, it can be a really hard loss. And it was like, whoa, that's it. Because he, at a time in my life when I felt like no one got me, for many, many years, he was like the guy that I could go and listen to his lectures, and I'm like, he gets it. You know what I mean?
We as human beings strive to feel connected.
Yes, exactly.
So when you lose that connection, it sucks.
Yeah, it sucks, yeah.
And I like how she didn't like judge and say like, I don't know why you're crying so much, right? Mm-hmm. Like it's just like, it's just hard.
Yeah.
Right? And that's something that I've struggled with like after my dad passed away, and even now, you know, people, I struggle to find what to say, right? Because people are like, oh, how are you?
Which is so...
And, like, today I'm fine, you know? Like, yesterday I was not fine, like, you know, but...
Okay. Just the way you said that tone of voice, I heard it, how are you? Like, shut the fuck up.
I don't need you to feel bad for me.
Yeah.
Like, I'm okay,
like, they
you know?
can't come to you and just be like, you know, hey, I don't know if you feel like it now, but if you ever feel like it, I'm here to listen.
Yeah.
Like, isn't that a world of difference?
Or just, like, for me, like, show up.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I
Be
think
here
that
and
that's
listen.
the biggest thing, like... People say, you know, oh, what can I do for you?
Mm-hmm.
Just be here.
Mm-hmm.
Come over.
Yeah.
Let's hang out.
Yeah.
Bring dinner. You
Mm-hmm.
know, like, let's do something together, right?
It's always really basic, right?
Yeah.
It's just be here,
and that was
hold the
thing.
space,
Yeah.
shut the hell up, let me talk, or just hang out, and I don't even need to talk.
Right.
Basics. Let's
just feel connected.
Yeah.
Like, you know, and so, like, it's so... And I still... I guess I'm kind of, like, an a-hole about it, because sometimes, like, people will say, like, oh, how's your dad, if they don't know him?
Oh, yeah.
Dead.
Yeah.
And then, like, the look on people's
Uh-huh.
faces, you know, and I guess that's, like, kind of mean, but I'm like, well, you asked the question and I gave you an answer,
Yeah.
so, I mean, if you want to know, like, he's dead.
Yeah, and there's no easy
you know?
way to,
What are you going to say, you
Uh-huh.
know? And so it's so hard.
I think you have the right to answer whatever the hell you want in that case.
Right?
You know
like,
what I mean?
not here anymore.
Yeah.
So it's just, it's hard, because then people, you know, so many people, like, are you okay? What do you need? How can I help you? And those are great. It's great to ask me that, because it's great to feel like you care, right?
Yes.
And that's, like, really, I feel snarky, because that's really what people are trying to show me, is that they care.
Of course.
Right? But to me, like, your actions and your presence and you showing up
That's it.
means more than anything you could say to me.
Yes, and actions speak louder than words
And
so strongly in this case.
And it's the same thing
like
for,
a
like,
grief,
my kids at school. Like, you don't need to be this, like, Gandhi of teachers, right?
No.
You just show up.
The basics.
And you hold a space for them.
Yep.
You just are there.
Yep.
You know? And sometimes that's enough.
Yeah.
And sometimes it's not.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, you know.
Yeah.
And it's just...
In the cases where it's not, you lecturing definitely isn't going to be the thing that
Nobody's gonna
helps.
hear that anyway, and
Yeah,
nobody,
exactly.
and you know what I mean? You're
Yeah.
talking yourself until you're blue in the face, and your
Uh-huh.
kids are like, you're so annoying.
Yeah.
And, you know, it doesn't matter how good of a point you have.
No, I know. It's so self-centered to lecture, and I've done it. I've lectured. I'm recovering.
It's like
but
what
yeah.
we grew up with.
Exactly,
Like, it's
yeah.
so hard, you know? And I
Yeah.
went to, I have the blessing of going to, like, a bunch of in-services that the diocese will put on for us. And I went to one on Friday, and, like, I've been kind of, like, growing my kind of mantra for how I educate people.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know, the hardest thing is to know that, like, kids do well when they can. Well, people in general do well when they can.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah, we act
No
like it's a
kid
choice.
wants to be a jerk.
I know.
Like, you know what I mean?
That's beautiful.
And
Kids
it's-
do well when they can.
And it's hard because you think immediately, oh my God, Jimmy is tapping his pencil again, and I swear to, like, why can't you just sit there and stop tapping your pencil?
Mhm.
Like, I have asked you a million times, right?
Mm-hmm.
He can't help it.
Yeah.
Like, he's not doing it on purpose to annoy me,
No,
you know?
exactly.
Or it's like with kids
That's
who
the
have...
story we tell ourselves, though, real quick. We have a whole reason, and it's always
Especially
gonna
as a teacher,
Yeah.
you know, why
It's
are
personal
you making
to me.
origami and you're throwing an eraser at him and
Yeah.
you are walking around? Why the hell are you walking around?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
go sit down, right?
Uh-huh.
Because, like,
we take it
our
all personally. Yeah.
our view of education
Mm-hmm.
is that if my kids are not sitting down looking at me and taking notes, they are not listening,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's not necessarily the case.
Absolutely.
So it's hard because it's like kids do well when they can. How do I, and it's super hard because I have the struggle daily of, like, how do I reach all the needs of my kids where they're at right now,
Yeah.
right? I have this
Good
kid
luck.
who's reading at a 3rd grade level, and then I have a kid who's can't even, you know, basic sounds and phonograms are a struggle, you know?
Yeah.
How do I challenge this one and empower this one,
Yes.
you know? So it's super, super hard. And
Teaching is a complete art form.
and then you put the emotional and how do I reach the needs emotionally of my kids each day,
Mhm.
and it can be exhausting.
Yeah.
It can be super, super exhausting,
No, I've
you
done
know? So, but it's also humbling,
it. Yeah.
you know? It also makes me feel sometimes like, you know, if I'm super upset and I go to work and then I see it just makes my problem so much smaller.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, okay, I'm fighting with whoever, but like, I'm making such a bigger difference. You know what I mean? You just feel small in a good way, though, right?
Yeah.
Not in like a...
Because you're part of, you see how you're part of something so much bigger than your little problem.
And like, my problem is so worldly.
Yeah.
Right?
Of course,
like...
Yeah. I all the time, my oldest stepdaughter and I, we do this thing where we say first world problems to each other.
Yeah.
It's a little inside joke.
Yeah.
So whenever we
my
do it
phone's
to each
not
other,
working.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
You know?
Yeah, and we'll even catch ourselves. Like, we'll be saying something, it'll be like, this is a first world problem.
I had that the other day. Like, I forgot my AirPods at home and was like, oh my God. I was so upset. And then I was like, am I really...
I wanted to have a good day today. I don't have my AirPods.
How am I going to listen to my podcast at lunch? Like, my day is ruined, right? And there is my inner child, my inner 4-year-old that's like, I didn't get that brownie. I'm... Game over.
Yeah.
Might as well just call it quits today, right? Like, and it's so... Yeah, but I think, like, the blessing that... You know, my kids teach me just as much as I teach them.
Yeah,
you
absolutely.
know? Like, how to just slow down and be simple.
Yeah.
Sometimes I have, like, this whole lesson plan planned out, and, like, all we do is have free play.
Yeah.
Because kids are still learning, right? Like, I can still hit all of my... But, like, kids are learning how to play with each other and how to collaborate and how to share and how to effectively be a part of a group.
Yeah, exactly.
Right?
That's what being an adult is. That's a huge part of their education. That it doesn't translate to textbooks or whatever, but yeah, that's
how many times have you done geometry and done like proofs?
Exactly.
Since you like got out of geometry.
Yeah,
I've never done one again.
And
you
how
know,
many
like,
times have you been in a group and had to collaborate and work it out? You know, yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So
giving yourself a little bit of like, space to let that play out and realize that they're getting a whole lot out of that is awesome. As you're talking, I just keep thinking again and again. Everyone should have to teach for like a year. Teach a 4 or 5 year old class, because you learn so much.
You do.
And
even if the only thing you get is how much respect you have for the people who can do that every day.
Yeah. Yeah. Then you won't be the parents that complain about teachers. I know you live it probably. You know it more than me. That complain about teachers that have never had to run a group of more than like 2 kids. I'm like, you don't even know what you're talking about.
Right.
You've never even dipped your toes in the pool that is the chaos of having a group of kids.
Right?
Run.
And so for a really long time in my career, I felt like that, right? Like, I would be so annoyed with those parent-teacher conferences that you know are coming, and you know this parent, for lack of a better word, is
you should
just,
do this, and that. Why don't you do this? Yeah.
But again, like, I have to take a step back and hold that space for them just as much as I hold it for their children.
And you're being
their
teacher at that point. Yeah.
And like knowing like, wow, that really is sad that you still have not figured this out. So like, let me hold this space for you. And that's where like grounding yourself and bubbling yourself comes so in handy, because
you still gotta
it's
be the
not
adult.
an attack on me, it's an attack on themselves.
You got it.
But they're not self-aware enough to be able to objectively think about what they're upset and how to fix it.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah, 100%. That's Buddhism 101. That's
big kids in little bodies. Or no, little kids in big bodies.
Yeah,
You know what I
yeah,
mean?
yeah.
And like, it's the same for a lot of the adults that are walking around this planet.
100%.
You don't know how to deal with your emotions, like you don't have anything.
Yeah, exactly.
You can't function.
Right? I think of it as like you're a slave to your own emotions. Like, you don't, there is no like.
And your environment, right?
Yep.
Something goes wrong, and that stimulus like sets you off.
That's it.
Right?
Yeah.
And it's the hardest thing, and like, it's just an ongoing battle, right? Like, there are days where like I consciously know that the stimulus is coming in, and I am just
and I'm
mad,
still feeling it
right?
anyway.
And I'm just like, I just want to be mad today.
Yeah, exactly.
So, and it's hard because.
And as soon as the resistance is kind of backed off from it, then it loses its juice. Then it kind of plays it out, and then
Right.
But it's the like, I shouldn't be mad. That shit could last.
Like, why should I be mad? Everything's going the way I wanted it to. Like, what the heck? Yeah.
Yeah.
Can we pause?
Yeah, of course.
Thanks.
Okay.
And I want to switch my.
Okay, part 2.
We're gonna get into the crazy stuff.
Okay, cool.
This is my jam.
Okay, so my dad passed away, just to frame this out. My dad passed away almost a year ago. We were super, super close. Disgustingly close, I will say.
He sounds like a really badass dad.
He is. He is. I feel so. It's really cool to know that like I'm half of that.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Oh, God, you're gonna make me cry. For real, that's so sweet to like.
Yeah.
I unfortunately don't totally feel like that with my parents, but like
I'm really, really lucky.
Yeah, I know. I think of like I in the best world, the like Disney movie world, my girls will grow up and say like, I feel lucky that.
Yeah.
You know, that's really cool. I totally.
Well, I feel like I mean, I get along really well with my mom too, so I just feel super blessed and lucky. But my dad and I have always just had this this closeness, right? Like it almost like I feel like made my mom kind of bitter because we were just right, and like whenever they were fighting, I would always pick us up, you know.
Yeah.
And so when he passed away, I was absolutely devastated. I dreamt and felt him way more when he had first passed away. And then recently I was thinking like, and it's not that I'm not thinking of him, but it's like when somebody just, you experience that loss, that next chapter right after it, like everything reminds you of them, right? Like smells and songs, and you're finding the meanings of all these things, right?
Because he was just here and all of a sudden he's gone, and there's still the residue of that still.
And so as time progresses, right, like our worldly body just, because they say like even your cells have to grieve, right? That's why we grieve so intensely when we first lose something, right? Like that's why you were crying so much when that person had passed away, right?
The nervous system, everything is working it out.
Everything, like even, and I think people don't realize like your physical body grieves the loss of something, of anything, right? And so as time goes on and your cells regenerate, you know, you kind of, the world keeps turning, right? And you don't think about them as often, and it's almost like waves, right? Like at first you're just like pummeled, like wave after wave, and you can't, like you're feeling all these emotions and you can't come up for air, and you're just gasping for breath, right? And as time goes on, the waves become, you know, the storm still comes, but you know what the feeling is, and they're not as long, right? The storms aren't as long. They still come, they still are overwhelming, but you kind of know that you're gonna,
and you've got a little bit of space,
right? And you know, you know that you're not gonna feel like this forever all the time from now on, you know? But I was thinking to myself, like, man, like I haven't really had a dream about him, like I haven't really like thought about him that much, like, because at first when he had first passed away, like that summer, I'm a teacher, so I have summers, you know, usually are pretty lax, and I was outside a lot in my backyard, and this same white butterfly I would see every single day. And
I remember you telling me.
Like there, you know, there's a whole story about that, but we'll get into that a different day. But basically, so it's like everything reminded me of him, and everything like was his spirit, and you know, just time goes on, and so I'm like, man, I haven't really thought about him in a while. Like, I really want to make a conscious effort into like holding space for that, right? Like setting aside a time where I can just think about something of him, you know, like still having him be a part of my life.
Which is something like a lot of cultures do purposefully, right? De dos los muertos.
Yeah.
Like,
right? Or even like you have like that, what is that table that they have with the pictures, right?
Yeah.
And when your pictures are gone and nobody has your picture, like that's when you die.
Yeah.
That's when you're gone,
Coco.
right?
Yeah.
And so it was weird because then, you know, a couple days had gone by, nothing really happened. And then this was after, so this was like the first kind of holiday season without my dad, and things were so crazy, which I'm grateful for, because the more time you have to sit and think is just the more time to, not ready to be sad about that yet around the holidays, you know, and that's okay. I'm just not there yet. And so I was at my boyfriend's mom's house, and my boyfriend's mom runs a dog hotel.
Nice.
So it is a little bit overwhelming for me. Love them to death. Love how I feel when I'm there, but like it's a little overwhelming, right? Like, and at this particular time they had 16 small dogs.
Wow.
And so I had decided that if I was going over there, I was going to be a little bit inebriated, because that's really, I need to numb myself to this stimuli, because like it is just too much, right? And holding that space for myself, that like that's okay. Right? It's okay for me to be drunk on holiday break when like I know I'm going to be overwhelmed, right? Like, And so I had got a little drunker than I wanted to, which was funny because I had like 2 White Claws and a glass of champagne, like total basic white girl, but like I was drunk. I was like, wow, I used to be able to drink so much. Like, okay. And there was this dog there that totally reminded me of my dad. Like he was just this short, stocky, like schnauzer with these big eyebrows, and my dad was Italian, like a short, stocky Italian man with his chest hair and his gold chain, his big eyebrows, like mustache, beard, since the day I was born, right? Yeah. And I'm like, man, like, and the dog was just like sitting next to my lap, like all over me. Anytime another dog would come up, he would like growl at him, and I was just like, man, like this dog is my dad, right? It even looks like him. And so we're all laughing about it, and I had pulled up this picture of my dad from when he was younger and in Mexico with my mom, and he's got his gold chain with the Italian horn on it and his chest hair out, and he's, you know, sitting with his arm on his leg, kind of, you know, like all stoic. And I held up the picture next to this dog's name is Gino, by the way, Gino. Like, who names their dog that? And I'm like, dude, this is my dad, like, for sure. And we all kind of laughed about it. Oh my God, it looks just like him. And then went about our business, right? And a couple minutes later, I had finished my glass of champagne, which was sitting on this little coffee table, you know, a couple feet in front of me. And champagne glasses are kind of heavy, you know, like it's the champagne flute, like the stem is kind of heavy. Yes. And it was empty, but all of a sudden I had gotten a back scratcher for Christmas, and so I was scratching the dog with my back scratcher because I was drunk. And like all of a sudden the champagne glass, I'm not even kidding you, flies off the table and hits me in the foot.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What?
And like my boyfriend's mom and her partner are very spiritual and very, you know, into this kind of like, into this kind of stuff. And Dina goes, your dad's here. That was your dad. And I was just like
without any hesitation.
Holy moly. Like, whoa, right? Yeah. Like, and it wasn't like the door was closed, like no dogs were running by. Yeah, like it was just this like surreal, like, I was just blown away by like how much energy that must have taken for him to like be so new on this other realm and like do that, like right whoa, right? Yeah. And so I couldn't even really get that far into it because I was drunk and I didn't want to cry, and like I was just like, okay,
just enjoy the
moving on, like right? And so a couple nights later I had fallen asleep and I had a dream, and it wasn't like your normal like I saw him, right? Like, but I felt him, like he was there and I could hear what he was telling me, but like I didn't see him, he wasn't there, like, but I was with one of my cousins and my aunt, and we were like all just, you know, doing what we do, just having dinner, hanging out, you know, and he was telling me like, these are good people, like stay with these people, like these are who you need to be with, right? Yeah. And then I had woken up because there was like a slam, and like normally when you wake up in the middle of the night to something slamming, you're like right, like a little startled. Like I was so calm, and I had just happened to look up, and I have like 4 or 5 pictures like on my headboard, right? The one picture of my family, which was me, my dad, my mom, and my brother, had fallen over. Wow. And I was just like, okay, Dad, like, I know I said I wanted this, but, like, I'm getting conflict. Like, okay, I get it. Don't waste your energy here. Like, cool. But it was so cool to just, and it gives me, like, so much, like, hope isn't even the right word, but it's just so cool to know that, like, this worldly thing that we're calling life is, like, not it.
Yeah.
You know? 100%. And it's so cool because, like, I feel
it's freeing. You feel so much peace, so much,
things aren't as scary, and they're not as, like, big emotionally, you know? And it was so cool to know that, like, those spirits and those connections that you have spiritually go beyond your physical body.
Yeah.
Right?
100%.
Like, my dad's physically not here anymore, but, like, I very much, since the day he passed away, like, have felt that he is still here.
Yeah.
And it was so cool.
Yeah.
It was really cool.
Yeah, that's really cool that you're open to it. Yeah. And unfortunately, a lot of people are like, well, it doesn't make scientific sense, so I'm just going to file it away. And it's like you're
trying to make something rational that's just not rational.
It's just not, exactly.
You know?
Yeah,
like,
it's not supposed to be rational.
Right.
Like, how does it make you feel? Does it, does it help you day to day? And when certain shit just comes and hits you right in the face, you gotta freaking, or in the foot in your case.
Right, yeah, exactly, right?
you gotta, this is the latest that Paul's ever come up in my podcast, but my guru, Paul, who I always bring up, he talks about, like, a miracle can happen, and we can, like, get over it in 20 minutes. But we can hold on to a resentment for 20 years, right? There's a bias to the way that our brains work. So, like, when a miracle happens, he says, like, honor it. take the time to honor the miracle. You know what I mean? And that might not be easy. Right. You might be scary.
Well, look at our world. It's so fast paced. Like, okay, on to the next. You know. And it's like, no. Sometimes it's important to just sit and be like, whoa.
Yeah. You know. And
that's cool.
And I've had more than a handful of cases in my life of miracles, of things I thought were impossible that happened, that revealed there's so much more than, you know, what the baseline cultural narrative reality is of what's going on. There's so much better and greater, and our problems are so much smaller than we really tell
just
ourselves
worldly,
they are.
You know what I mean? Like, you know? It's
And so, like, the evidence is there, you know, just personal. I'm not saying the scientific evidence. I'm saying the subjective personal evidence is there. Honor the miracles, you know?
Yeah.
And it can really just, it's okay.
Right.
You know, and it's cool to be able to come to somebody that can hold the space to be like, yeah, I've seen it too. I believe you.
And just like, whoa, how cool that you could experience that.
I'm so happy for you that you're able to experience something like that.
Even if you think that it is total just hocus pocus, like.
Yeah. Well, it's real for you.
Right.
You know, it's like when you do psychedelics. If you eat mushrooms, you know, okay, well, it's all happening in your head. Well, freaking take the mushrooms yourself. Tell yourself.
Experience your shit, and then I'll experience mine,
exactly.
right? Like,
and tell me it's all happening in your head, because the feeling for me on like psilocybin is this is more real than like I'm dreaming when I'm in my normal sober brain. This is reality. That's one of the kind of messages it sends, you know what I mean?
Or just like, what is reality? Like, is this even reality, or is this another like subconscious, like,
you're getting into
quote unquote reality that like I've created because our brains are searching for something tangible? So right,
this just might blow your mind. I got this podcast to share with you. So one of my favorite podcasters, Sam Harris, he's a neuroscientist that's also into Buddhist meditation. I could send it to you afterwards. He's, again, probably the other guy. So it took this long for Paul and Sam Harris to come up, but they're my two go-tos.
Right.
So if you're playing the drinking game, listeners, take your shots, because I just got Paul and now Sam. So I do Sam.
It's been a while, so.
Exactly, yeah. So I do Sam Harris's meditation app every morning. It's like, he's a huge freaking influence in my life. And so he recently did a podcast with a evolutionary psychologist, I think, or evolutionary biologist, that was saying that basically, it's so cool. So, okay, have you ever watched the show Brain Games?
Yes.
Okay.
I play that for my kids all the time.
Okay, that's our favorite. That's like the only show the whole family can sit down and watch together, and everyone likes it. So Brain Games will show you that your brain takes shortcuts. Right?
Of course.
Right. So you see something and it's an illusion.
Why work harder when you can work smarter?
Exactly, right. And so there's a reason for that. Evolutionarily, those that saw the illusions, they worked smarter, so they survived better, right? So you can go watch an episode of Brain Games. You can convince yourself in an episode your brain takes shortcuts, right? So this evolutionary, I think, psychologist was talking about not only does your brain take some shortcuts, but actually he ran computer model studies that shows that chances are the majority of what you see actually is an illusion. That actually you don't see reality the way that it really is. To even say it really is out there, we base all that on our own scientific studies and evidence and models and stuff, but we're using a flawed system, our cognition, to run all those studies. So he's saying that basically those that see reality not as they are were more like, not as it truly is, whatever that means, right? Were more likely to survive. And so chances are, because of evolution, the world isn't actually at all like we see. We're seeing a
it's a very
dream. We're seeing a mirage that is set up to help us survive, not to teach us what really is out there. Right?
But gives us something to grasp to, something tangible, right?
And so he calls it the interface, which I love. That our interface with the infinite data that is the physical world.
The I am, the is, right?
Yeah, right. That the interface actually is purposefully not supposed to show you the way it really is. It's only supposed to show you, and then something like a psychedelic drug will really fuck with the interface.
Right, right.
Just be like, you know, oh man, I was so convinced that my floor didn't spiral and move. You know what I mean? And now it's doing it.
These words on the page, we're not walking away, but here we are, right?
And so we've biased just sober, regular brains that have evolved, but that doesn't point anything towards reality. Reality could be this incredibly obscure, weird thing that,
or it could be absolutely nothing,
or it could be nothing,
which is
the
crazy.
Zen way. Yeah, which is the Zen way of looking at it, is actually everything's empty, and if there's anything, it's just the arising in this moment.
Right.
Like the past. That's what I'm really into, and that's stuff that my guru Paul talks about. Like the past, there is no past. The past is an idea that you entertained cognitively now.
Right.
You can't go to the past, but you are seemingly going to the past all the time.
You
in
can
your
remember
mind.
the past,
right? Exactly, right?
Yeah.
You can invoke it, but everything you ever invoked about the past, everything you ever could invoke about the future, can only ever happen now. And that's what I love. One of my favorite little mental flips that he does is people always talking about, I want to get into the moment, right? Like, God, I was really good at being in the moment.
Be here now.
Yeah, be here now.
Yeah.
Right? And he goes, just realize you can't be out of the moment.
Right.
You are the moment.
And you're trying so hard, right?
So
it's
hard.
Almost like meditation where people are like, empty your mind, empty your mind, empty your mind.
Oh shoot, my mind's full of empty your mind.
Dang it, I'm thinking about emptying my, I'm thinking about thinking, like, you know.
Yep.
That's...
which is another Paul thing. He says you can't create stillness with activity. That would be activity. So the activity of saying, I want to be still. I want to be
breathe in, breathe out. Breathe in, right?
Yeah. And so we're getting right into my favorite little zone there. But we were talking. Okay, so if your dad comes and talks to you, whether you're sober, drunk, high, on mushrooms, whatever the hell, that's as real as anything. Right, because it's your subjective experience, and
it's no more real than me sitting here talking to you, other than the fact that the physicality of it is something that my brain can grasp.
You got it.
Right,
yep, exactly.
And it's socially acceptable.
Exactly.
To grasp that.
Socially
right?
and culturally, if you go to most people and say it, but people just the fear of let's just be honest about our subjective experience, Like, if I really subjectively feel that I'm seeing angels, because I've seen some crazy shit, Like, when I sit and watch my guru at his talks and stuff, his face will, look seemingly, to, turn into Jesus' face, and then, turn into my dad's face. And I'll be sitting there. And at first, there was this very subtle feeling inside of, you're losing it,
fear,
come back to reality. Fear, right?
Fear, and then, sheer panic that, this is not acceptable.
Exactly.
Right?
I'm losing my mind. Oh, no. And then I've been to maybe 100 talks, maybe something like that by now. And so now when it starts to happen, I can just relax and be like, oh, this is interesting.
And just embrace what it is and not put any judgment or connotation on what it is or what it isn't.
Yeah.
Right?
And then life will give you miracles.
It just is.
It is what it is. Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that's my very long-winded way of saying I'm very glad that you're having those kinds of experiences.
Yeah.
And he is here. And, just like I was talking earlier about Ram Dass, before his body passed, I never had conversations with him. Now I'm having conversations with him.
Right.
Cool.
Which is even your relationship, so to speak, for lack of a better word, is just evolving.
Exactly.
Right? And it's really cool. And I thought when you had asked me to do this podcast and, you said you were coming over today, I was really thinking about it because I was like, man, these experiences are so cool.
Yeah.
But there is some kind of something special about having those just between two souls. But then I also thought but it's also really cool to share it. And maybe somebody will hear it and say oh, I'm not crazy, or I'm not, right? Or just getting people to be more mindful of those things that literally are coming and hitting you in the face, right? Or in the foot, or
That's literally the thesis of this podcast, because what podcasting did for me was I heard certain people, Pete Holmes, I bring him up all the time. You Made It Weird, great podcast. I could send you some good ones. He was saying things and I was like, oh, I'm not alone. I'm not the only one.
And just raising your awareness too, within yourself.
Yeah. That's what
isn't really that what we're doing? I know, and it's hard for me because I work, like I mentioned, I work at a Catholic school. So I love it in the sense that there is that spirituality.
Yeah.
And there is that spiritual community that you're
Even though there's a lot of baggage with
there
it.
is a lot of baggage, right?
Yeah.
Like, and so I kind of, but the blessing of having your own mind is you can pick and choose what you choose to believe, and you can pick and, this isn't the Catholicism like back in the day where like if you don't do what I say you get hit and you go to mass and you just shut up and sit down, right?
Or way back in the day where they tortured you.
Right, yeah, exactly.
Position.
But I was at this mass and, I had just, I'm also feel like I need to preface this with I wear my heart on my sleeve. So I don't, so anyways, I was going to this in-service on Friday. And normally we start with mass. But for this specific day, we ended with mass. And I thought, I had gotten into a fight with my boyfriend the night before and I didn't sleep well. And I was just like, looking for a way out. I could leave before mass and nobody would know the difference. There's 800 people here, right?
And I deserve to leave before
mass.
Right,
and I just don't want to be here, right? I'm not comfortable here. Yeah. And then I thought, okay, I'm going to go to mass and I'm going to leave after I get the blessing or whatever. I'm just going to walk out the door. I'm going to sit in the back. Yeah. And then as I'm sitting in the back, because this was my plan, one of the people in the diocese had said, like, everybody in the back needs to move forward. Like this, moving forward, it makes us a community and it brings you closer to Jesus, right? Well, which for them is great. And I do believe that there is higher powers out there. So, I kind of
one
take,
metaphor.
Right. Like I kind of take that as like, okay, like creator, right? Like you're closer and and so I thought, and I wasn't going to move. And then my friends were like, let's go up there. We should, and I'm like, you're really ruining for this for me. Like I was going to leave.
I have my whole story set up. I'm going to leave. I deserve to leave.
And it was so crazy because I was like, okay. And then the pastor was talking about how, if you have anxiety or if you have depression or if you're feeling uncomfortable or if you just are lost, like, in this sense, he said, like, come here, come to the table, right? Like, everything will make sense when you can just sit here and be, right? And I'm like, holy crap. Okay, I'm supposed to be here, obviously.
Yeah.
And then he goes on to say, because, it was an in-service for all these teachers, so it's very much based on, like I said, holding that space for the kids, what we provide for the kids. And he brought up this really good point that really the only thing that us as human beings are here to do on this earth is to love. Love your kids, like love people that you think don't deserve it, right? Yeah. And I was like, holy moly, like, oh my God, like, you know what I mean? And I was like, oh, okay, like it totally brought into light, like the fight that I had with my boyfriend, right? Like I just need to love him where he's at right now. Yeah. Because me scolding him and yelling at him and telling him that this is over if you don't change, like, isn't fixing anything. And it's making him feel worse than he already feels, right? Like, he is screaming at me, I need you to hold space.
You got it.
And I'm like, nope, right? Because I have standards and I'm putting my foot down.
You just took that right out of my brain. Because we all have different ways of saying, please love me, please accept me, please hold space for me, right?
Let me show you this terrible part of me and please accept it, right?
Please,
like, I'm not perfect. Like, please love me. Yeah. Isn't that what we all strive for?
We're all looking for in our own weird, wacky, quirky ways.
Right? And so then I was just like, okay, universe, like, I see you.
Yeah.
Thanks for having to make somebody be like, come sit in the front, right? Because I couldn't get past myself that day. Yeah. I was just like, and I left feeling so much calmer and more grounded and more connected, right? Like, again, what we strive for as humans, like to feel connected, to feel loved, right? And it was just a big eye opener. Yeah. Right?
Like, hell yeah. And that's.
And I was able to come back to the table and say, like, hey, like, I accept you where you're at right now. Yeah. This just hurt my feelings. Yeah. So, like, I need a couple of days to just, like, breathe. Yeah. Yeah. And I think you should do the same. But, like, we still are connected, and I still am loving you and accepting you. And
that's much more a place of unconditional love. Right. Like, I still love you.
You're just making me really angry right now, and I don't want to be around you, right? Like,
and, like, the thing I say a lot to my kids, my wife, everybody, is, like, I love you no matter what, but we don't have to make it this hard. We can make it a lot easier. You know
and I love you doesn't mean that I need to like you all the time.
Exactly, yeah. Right? And I love you doesn't mean I'd have to accept all of your behavior. It doesn't mean that you're perfect right where you are and you don't need to grow. You don't need to work on anything. Like, yeah, we all need to.
And it doesn't mean that you're not going to fall and totally, like, scrub so hard and, like,
yeah, but that, and that's, I really,
I feel like that's my most important job to my daughters, as like I love you no matter what. I love you no matter what. Always, you know what I mean? And it's like and then they're not old enough to really get it yet, but like
yes they are.
Yeah, they are. They're getting
yes
it.
they are.
They're getting it. And I say to my stepkids, they're a little bit older, I'll be like, there's nothing you could do that could take like my love away for you. You know, like
and like what a place of just like calmness for them to be
Yeah.
in, to hear that, to know that like I can feel and act however I see fit.
Yeah.
And I'm still gonna have a place of safety.
Yeah.
Right?
Exactly.
Like that's super cool.
Yeah, if you can like freaking offer anything, you know, especially to a family member, to a friend, anything, like that's you know.
Well, and it's so hard. Like I had this one mom at school say like, I'm not here to be my kid's friend. And I was so taken aback, and I said this, and I probably shouldn't have, but I said, but aren't you though?
Yeah.
Like if you're not your kid's friend,
Yeah,
like,
no.
who is?
Yeah.
Right? Like who is their friend? If you can't say, I mean, there's a difference.
If they can't count on you, yeah, and friend is, you know, there's a lot of
loosely,
yeah.
Right, loosely based, because I'm over here like, it doesn't mean that you don't discipline them and you don't instill values and you don't say like, you can't act like that and expect to get a positive outcome, right? Like, but it does mean, like you said, that this is a place of safety and love and acceptance.
No
you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I just thought this poor kid
I know.
is gonna grow up thinking, and like in turn, those are gonna be the relationships that he craves.
Yeah, of course.
And those are gonna be the relationships that he passes on.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, if maybe my one job in this scenario is to just say like, your kid is perfect, just how they are.
And maybe that little taste means he won't grow up and pass that on. He'll, you know.
I hope so.
Yeah.
I hope so.
All you can do is try, right?
And you don't need to be defensive about a very, like, logical or factual. The facts that I'm presenting to you are not, right? Like, we're not taught to compartmentalize those. If you're saying that my kid can't pay attention, you're saying he's a bad kid and I'm a bad mother.
Yeah, that's it.
And I'm failing,
yes,
right?
And I'm like, there,
no, like he just can't sit down, like you know. And I love him and I accept him, but like in a classroom, it needs to be conducive somewhat to everybody's learning.
Yep.
And he's affecting that right now,
right?
Like,
where I heard it, but it's a new thing I've been implementing, especially in disagreements, is the enemy is not the person, it's the problem.
Right.
It's so subtle, but it's so huge.
Well,
right?
And it's not me against you.
Yeah.
It's us against the problem.
That's it. I know. It's so I love.
But when you're
so,
pissed and when you're in that red zone, you're like, no, you're wrong.
Yeah.
I am mad at you, and you are wrong, and I am right.
But
and
at least to like have the anchor of knowing that storm will pass and you can come back to the problem. In the end,
zones of regulation, like your feelings are weather, and you can't, we can't control the weather.
Yeah, exactly.
I can't say like, man, I have my vacation next week. I'd really like it if it didn't rain.
Yeah, good luck.
Right, but like it comes and it goes, and like if I were to get upset every time it rained, well, I live in California, so I probably wouldn't be upset that often. But you know what I mean, in the sense of that, like
that's it. That's what
if you can do that for your emotions, like you're just so much more like the rock in the storm, right? And you're just grounded in who you are, and your emotions don't make you who you are.
You got it.
You know?
That's it.
And that's what I want my kids to know.
The greatest little gift lesson in my life has been causeless joy and peace. There doesn't have to be a cause for it. I can have joy. Just happy. I can have joy and peace for no good reason.
Well, right? And choosing that.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Like, there's always going to be something that's, like, not quite perfect and makes you a little uncomfortable.
Yeah. You can always find a reason not to have peace and not to be happy. So just realize whether the reason something as small as not having your AirPods, or as big as you got fired from your job, or you broke up with the love of your life. Pick. There's always going to be something. You can promise yourself that. But if you can find a general joy and peace underneath all that,
and just being,
that's the greatest fucking gift. That's better than any amount of money,
right?
Any amount of anything. It really is. You know?
There was this one song, I can't remember what it is, but it's like saying like, there's people so poor all they have is their money. And I was like, whoa, yes. Like, and being a teacher, I'm like, like, you millionaires, like, you know, but it goes back to that, like, that triangle, right? Like, if I can't meet my physiological needs, like, if I don't have food and can pay for a place to live, like, I'm not going to be able to, like, and we strive to climb that ladder, right? Like, we strive for self-actualization.
It's built into us for a reason. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah. That's awesome.
Yeah.
Hey, thank you for doing this
really
podcast.
Cool.
That was so much fun.
Yeah.
I gotta go. You gotta go. We could do it for another 3 hours. That was really cool.
I'm not going anywhere.
Yeah.
So we can do it anytime.
Okay. Right on. Thank you, Alayna.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you. Right on. Yeah.